So I wanted to do a quick video to show you guys the process I use to make my charms out of clay. In this video, I'm going to be using air dry clay. You can also use oven baked clay, same process. It doesn't make a difference. You'll just bake it instead of letting it dry for a few days. I start with having the parchment paper on my table. This is so that the clay doesn't stick to the table directly. It doesn't really stick to the parchment paper, so it works really well for this surface. And I don't have little wooden slates to put along the side, so I've taped together these popsicle sticks. I think there's 4 in this video taped together, and I use that to make sure that when I roll it out with the rolling pin, it comes out super even all the way across. If I don't use these, then oftentimes what happens is the clay comes out uneven, and if you're trying to make the same shape or the same piece over and over again, you want to make sure that they're consistent all the way across. I also like to flip over the piece of clay. When it is on parchment paper, the parchment paper will absorb the moisture from the clay, and it can leave these creases in it. So I flip it over a couple times just to make sure to even those out. And then once I cut the piece out of the clay, I will do the same and even out those creases from the parchment paper. So I'll do that. I'm doing that here in the video using just one singular popsicle stick. I had a bunch of these wide ones. It works really well. There are specific tools you can get for this, but I'm just smoothing out the creases that you see, and I'm not pushing very hard because I don't want them to show back up on the other side once I've smoothed them all out. Next, I'm going to be using, this is just a small little cookie cutter shape. I got this at Michael's in the craft section. It is near their clay stuff, and it comes in a pack of 3 different circle sizes and square sizes, and it has made my life so much easier. Before using a tool like this, I would cut out the shape that I was looking for on a piece of paper. I'd put that on top of the clay, trace it with the X-Acto knife, remove the paper, and then cut the whole piece out. And I do that now with a lot of my other pieces that aren't just standard shape size. So I make cat and dog charms as well. You can find all of the ones available on my website. These circle ones I do primarily for my fruit charms, and I might do some other designs on them. What I like to do is not cut too many out at the same time, and just make sure that I have the time to smooth the edges and make sure that there's no creases in there before I move on to the next batch. I have in the past cut out a lot of shapes all together, and then I find as I'm starting to get through them that they're already starting to dry. If you're using oven baked clay, this won't be a problem for you. It won't dry in the air, but this is air dry clay, and sometimes the edges can harden up quite quickly. I also wanted to make a comment on the width of the clay that I'm using or that I've rolled out. My past charms, I have done them thinner. These ones are 4 popsicle sticks thick, so they're quite thick. They're going to be very sturdy. What I've noticed is that the thicker the pieces are, the less chance they have to warp. So I let these sit on a table or a piece of parchment or a tray for at least a couple days before I go ahead and gesso and paint them. But I've noticed with thinner cutouts that they tend to warp a bit. If you are very good at going back and checking on the pieces, then you can flip them over and flatten them out as you go over the course of a couple days. Sometimes I'll do up a batch on a Sunday though, and then I'm in work for a few days in a row and I don't get that opportunity, or I'll just forget. So I'm trying out thicker sizes, and it's actually worked really well. It's stopped the warping, so the pieces stay mostly flat just on their own, which is great. So in this video, I'll do 6 of these circles in total. I will smooth out the edges of them as I go now. I did the first 3 all together, but I will smooth the edges out as I go, and then there's this little fold over in the cutout shape, so you just smooth that out. Make sure there's no creases from when you were rolling out the clay, and then set it aside. So once I have all 6 of these pieces out and ready to go and smoothed over, I will add the eye pins to them, which is the piece that goes directly into the clay. If you were using oven baked clay, you could also do this, and then you can still bake it. The only thing that you really can't bake with clay is magnets. I think there is a type that you can, but they will lose their magnetism once they go through the oven and they just will no longer work. So you want to make sure that if you could use air dry clay to create the same pieces, so you could avoid that issue. You can also use air dry clay and put the magnet directly in the clay with a thin layer over top so that it doesn't even show, which is a nice touch. These ones are going to be charms, so they'll all receive an eye pin. I will mention that the types of eye pins that I've purchased, I've recently changed. I did originally buy eye pins from Michaels, which were brass, coated brass. And the pieces that I'm using here, I've ordered them from Amazon. These ones were labeled as stainless steel. You can also get ones that are an alloy mix. I prefer them. They work really well. I have also learned that the best way to help ensure that they do not fall out is to actually put a little bend in the pin itself. And so when I put it in, I put that bent section in straight, and then I curve the rest of the piece until the eye pin is at the top. I will show you another one here. But this I found is a little bit more effective. When the clay dries, it's almost like it's locked in there. It's not going to really make it around that corner. Whereas the other ones I was just sticking straight in, and over time they've been quite a bit easier to pull out. So I don't want that to happen if I'm selling these pieces. So I made the little corner at the bottom of the pin and put that piece directly into the clay, and then just pull the top of the pin straight up at an angle, and it'll slide in for you perfectly. If you are using a thicker piece, you can also curve it as you go down, kind of twist the pin as you go, or go straight most of the way and then do a turn at the bottom so that it'll all dry together and you won't be able to pull that pin out of there at all. With these ones, I can't really turn it because it'll poke out one of the sides. So I just do a little bit of a scoop with it into the clay. And I found that works really well. And then I just push the clay in around the top of the eye pin. I have also seen people add a small piece of clay in through the eye pin at the top. These ones that I'm using are quite small, so you could definitely give that a try if you have a bit of a wider circle at the top, but it'll take up probably most of that space in that eye pin, so I've just left it for now. And sometimes what I'll do once everything's completely dry is I'll put a small little bit of super glue at the very top, really just to lock it in there after everything's been resined. Okay, and I just want to show you guys here, these are some of my older pieces. This is my orange slice, and you can tell how far it's warped on me. This happened during the drying process. I tried to keep it flat as much as possible, but I must have missed turning it a couple times or once. When you put it on the table, it rocks. It's quite bad. And this watermelon's a bit thicker, so it's not nearly as bad, but still not great. And you can tell comparatively to these new charms here that it is quite a bit thicker, these new ones. And so I think this will completely solve the problem of warping. And just so you know, going forward, and you can make that same decision with your own charms.